What is going on, everybody? What is going on? The Catch fam, my name is John Dawson, and in today's video, we'll be breaking down my 5 must-start wide receivers for Week 9 of the 2023 fantasy football season. If you guys are new to the channel, this is all we do here all year round, free fantasy football content, redraft, dynasty, and best ball. If you guys are into that, be sure to subscribe on the way in. But more importantly, get in the comment section down below. Anything that you guys need, start sits, ads, drops, trades, whatever it may be, let me know. I'll get back to you guys as soon as I possibly can. Without further ado, let's hop into today's video. Last week, the first wide receiver I talked about was Adam Thelen. Here in Week 9, I'm going to talk about Adam Thelen again because for so many rosters out there, you drafted Adam Thelen extremely late. You got him off the waiver wire, acquired him in a trade, whatever it may be. He's your wide receiver 4 or 5 on a lot of rosters. But he's a wide receiver 8 in fantasy football right now. Didn't find the end zone last week, but still at 11 targets, 8 receptions, 72 receiving yards, and 15.2 fantasy points. He has double digits every game this year, except for Week 1 on the season. His target volume has been absolutely ridiculous. He's double-digit targets in every game except for 3 this year. Bryce Young has a ton of trust, great chemistry with Adam Thelen, and on top of that, they get a phenomenal matchup against the Indianapolis Colts in Week 9. He's going to get another good matchup in Week 10 against the Bears. I just don't see a world where we are sitting Adam Thelen, and even if he disappoints you, like, I don't know, we've barely gotten any disappointment out of him so far on the year. Like I said, outside of that Week 1 performance. So if you own Thelen, he's a phenomenal flex play. You shouldn't have to start him as your wide receiver 1 or 2, which is a good thing. Continue to roll with Adam Thelen in this flex. This matchup against the Colts, absolutely great. Don't think twice about it. Adam Thelen should not be on your bench as we approach Week 9. All right, last week I also encourage you guys to continue to have some confidence in starting Garrett Wilson of the Jets, and he finished with 17.6 fantasy points, 100 receiving yards off of 7 receptions and 13 targets. So when we look at things, Garrett Wilson has only given you single-digit fantasy performances twice this year, and I mean, he missed the double-digit mark in those games by 2.6 points or less. So even with the change at the quarterback position early in the season, he has been just fine. He has double-digit targets in 3 of his last 4 games, and he gets a great matchup against the Chargers in Week 9. They've been one of the worst teams in the league against opposing wide receivers. I know in Week 8 they looked much better, but that was against a backup quarterback and the Chicago Bears. So I think that the Jets at home will be fine offensively. Like, I mean, I know that the ceiling is still capped here with Zach Wilson at quarterback, but Zach Wilson has looked okay by Zach Wilson standards the last couple of weeks, and that the volume's going to continue to be there for Garrett Wilson. Good enough chemistry with Zach Wilson. Garrett Wilson continues to be a player that we can move into the flex and not really have to worry about things. He's got a couple more good matchups coming up. Chargers, Vegas, maybe a little bit rough against Buffalo, but then Miami. So I think if you own Garrett Wilson, don't be worried. Don't get smart. He's given you the production the last couple of weeks. Keep him in your lineup as we approach Week 9. Next up, let's talk about Chris Olave of the Saints, who gets a great matchup here in Week 9 against the Chicago Bears. I know that Olave has been disappointing essentially the last 2 weeks, even though he hit double digits in Week 7. Week 8, against the Colts, we expected much bigger things. He still led the team in targets, but I mean, ultimately, Michael Thomas had a better fantasy day, and Rashid Shaheed went crazy off of his 3 receptions for 153 receiving yards and a touchdown. But I still have faith in Chris Olave, and these next 2 games are really going to determine a lot in our overall confidence in Chris Olave as he gets the Chicago Bears in Week 9 and the Minnesota Vikings in Week 10. 2 really weak secondaries. This is really your last shot to play Chris Olave if you don't have faith in him. He's still a top 26 fantasy wide receiver. He's still only given you single-digit performances 3 times this year. Still leading the team in targets. It's a great matchup, a great opportunity, and then another great matchup and great opportunity in Week 10. I say we continue to roll with Chris Olave. A lot of you guys, he's sitting as your wide receiver 2, but even if you have to move him into the flex, which might feel more ideal, I still think we want to try and take advantage of this home matchup against the Chicago Bears. See what happens. Really wish that the Saints had a different quarterback other than Derek Carr, but I still have faith in Chris Olave. Let's keep him in our starting lineups moving into week 9. All right, next up on the list, I'm going with Rashod Rice of the Kansas City Chiefs, who hasn't really been giving us the highest ceilings throughout the season. 17 points in week 7 against the Chargers, but outside of that, not crazy high ceilings, right? But he has given you double-digit performances in 3 of the last 4 games and double digits in 4 of the last 6 games. And listen, this matchup against the Miami Dolphins, I talked about in the must-start running backs video with Isaiah Pacheco. I expect a lot of points in this matchup between the Chiefs and the Dolphins. I know the Chiefs' defense has been good this year. I don't really care. Just I have that feeling this is going to be one of those shootout type games. And Rashod Rice leading the team in targets for the wide receiver position. We're not including Travis Kelce here. And when I talked about Rashod Rice earlier in the season as a player that I really encourage you guys to go after on the waiver wire, that was the reason why. And that has not changed. He still is leading the team in targets at the wide receiver position, and nobody else is really stepping up. I mean, Sky Moore, awful. Kadarius Toney, awful. I know McCole Hardman's here. I know MBS is looming around, but man, I just don't care. Rashod Rice is the wide receiver for the Chiefs with the most upside and the most overall production on the season. If you own him, I love this matchup this week. It's a good matchup against the Dolphins. I know Jalen Ramsey's back, but I still see some opportunities for Rashod Rice because the way the wide receivers line up for this offense, the different packages that they use, Rashod Rice will get his opportunities. Ramsey will probably end up on a player like Hardman or even MBS throughout this game. So I think Rice will be just fine. The upside is there. The matchup is there. He's a good flex option moving into week 9. All right, last but not least, I'm going with T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals, who's a player for a lot of you guys. You might already be starting and not really expecting to see him in a video like this, but there has been enough disappointment and enough worry about T. Higgins that I think he's worth mentioning. Listen, the Bills have been pretty decent against wide receivers this season, but similar to the Dolphins and Chiefs game, this matchup between the Bills and the Bengals, I am expecting points. I'm expecting a lot of passing yards, a lot of receiving yards for wide receivers. I like this game script here. It's not always about the matchup. Sometimes you have to look at a game and try and determine the game script as a whole. These are two playoff caliber teams, two of the best teams in the AFC. I know that the Bengals are technically at the bottom of their division, but we still know what this team brings to the table. And Higgins, a very, very disappointing fantasy season so far, only giving you one single double-digit fantasy performance outside of this past week in week 8, or at least leading up to week 8, I should say. But he kind of redeemed himself, not a high ceiling, 11.9 fantasy points against the Niners, 6 targets, 5 receptions, ultimately 11.9 fantasy points. But I think he's worth flexing moving into week 9. Like I said, I expect points in this game. I think Higgins, this could be a get-right game for him. We know that Jamar Chase is still the guy, still the player getting the most targets. I know that Tyler Boyd has looked pretty good the last 2 weeks and found the end zone the last 2 weeks, but I still think those big play opportunities are going to come to life for Higgins, and I can't think of a better game for them to present themselves than a matchup against the Buffalo Bills at home in week 9. If you own T. Higgins, he is a high ceiling, good flex option, a must-start wide receiver moving into week 9. And that'll do it for today's video. If you guys did enjoy the content today or find it helpful, be sure to subscribe on the way out. This is all we do here all year round, free fantasy football content, redraft, dynasty, and best ball. If you guys are into that, be sure to subscribe. Other than that, get in the comments down below. Anything that you guys need leading up to week 9 of the season, let me know, and I'll get back to you guys as soon as I possibly can. With that, I will say, thank you guys so much for watching and or listening, and remember, you saw it here on The Catch.